Hello. Thank you for joining us today on Matters of Substance. This is Carly, your host, and our co-host, Betsy.
Yay!
Betsy.
It's been a little bit of a break for me, but I'm glad to be back on the podcast.
Yes, I'm so glad you're back with me. I appreciate it and love having you here to work through these days. I don't know.
I missed you.
Yeah, me too. I missed you. And I'm sure listeners missed you as well.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, but I sure missed you guys.
Betsy. Yeah. We want Betsy. I got a lot of emails.
Yeah, you can't have Carly and Betsy without Carly and Betsy.
That's right. So today we're going to actually talk about something very important. We're going to hear from a parent who has a story to share with us that I think all parents need to hear. Our guest is Diane. She is somebody who has worked with us at our coalition level as a volunteer, has been a active member, and we really appreciate her. But I think what she has to share is so impactful outside of just coalition work, but for everybody. So I'm going to open today with a quote from Diane, and then Diane will go ahead and share her story, and we'll have a conversation. So this is from Diane. I grew up and had 2 daughters. In spite of trying to do everything right, my youngest daughter discovered that alcohol and drugs could relieve the pain she was unable to escape as a result of her mental illness and depression. This led to her self-destruction and ultimate death by accidental drug overdose at the age of 36. That's heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, anyone as a parent, we try so hard to be able to navigate and teach our kids and help them with any trials and tribulations they might come across. But, sometimes try we might, and, we can't protect them from everything. So I think I'm really glad that Diane is able to be here with us and be able to talk about her experiences and hopefully help parents navigate this thing that we're all trying to get through together as parents.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, Diane, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my honor to be here and to share my story. And it's my prayer that it will help someone else.
It definitely will.
I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I've gone through. Mm-hmm. So I guess I begin by saying that my 36-year-old daughter was a victim of the opioid epidemic that is just plaguing our country. Around the age of 13, she told me, "Mom, there's something wrong with me." And I said, "What do you mean?" I could tell she wasn't sleeping. She would get up. Believe it or not, back we had a computer that was kind of a new thing. And she was Googling ways to be happy. And she said, "I don't have any reason to be sad, but I'm just not happy." And she started volunteering at nursing homes. They would say, "Is this a brownie project or Girl Scouts?" I'm like, "No, I just want to help." She would volunteer. She developed charts to work out and exercise, to eat right. She was trying to do everything that she read about would make her happy. She was very involved in the church, had a deep faith, just tried everything, but it just didn't really seem to work. So eventually we got her to a therapist, start with our local doctor, make sure there was no health reasons. She did have a history of migraines, which began at the age of 4. I remember her standing on my bed at the age of 4, holding her head and screaming, and then vomited, and that was her first migraine, which we didn't know she had migraines.
Wow, yeah.
So the doctor, they weren't so bad when she was younger. I mean, she didn't have them very frequently, but along with being a teenager, the hormones were going crazy and depression began, or we thought it was depression. Also, the migraines were getting worse, so she saw a neurologist as well as a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a counselor. But in spite of everything they tried, nothing just seemed to work. I think that along the line, she realized that the pain medicine they were prescribing for her migraines, while it didn't do so much for the migraines, it helped her emotional pain. And a few years after that, my husband decided to leave us. And I say us because it wasn't just me. He left his daughters too. Mm-hmm. He's an alcoholic. And they begged him to quit drinking to get help, and he's just like, no, he couldn't do that. So she found out that by saying she had a migraine, she would go to the ER and they would give her drugs that would stop the migraine supposedly, but it stopped her emotional pain. So she just went down that path. And in spite of the best of care, counseling, therapy, everything that we tried, the people we brought her to went back and forth between bipolar, depression, they didn't know what it was, but it was clear she was not okay. And then you add in the emotional pain of her dad just walking away from all of us. And then once he was gone, he would start to, they would see him, and he was just out of control because I was no longer in the house, and I didn't get to supervise the visits because my daughters were old enough to drive and see him, and it was never a good situation. So she, in spite of, a lot of stuff was very a struggle, but she did graduate from high school. She became a certified nursing assistant and began working in the school system that I worked at, where I was a nurse, and did an excellent job. She was just a wonderful caregiver. She did a one-on-one service to special needs children and really did a great job. But her spiraling just got out of control. She married someone who wanted to marry her, and she said yes, I think, to kind of get away from the pain of everything in her life, thinking that would be better, and ended up getting really heavy into alcohol, I think drugs, some stuff that I didn't know. Of course, she wanted to hide it from me and not let me know what was going on. And me being the eternal optimist, I'm just thinking, she's struggling with mental health, with migraines, with her dad being gone and everything. And I was blind to a lot of stuff. It wasn't until she moved out when she got married, and I saw in her bedroom there were some empty beer cans, wine cooler bottles and things, and at that point I really had the regret, how could I have not known that? And I really am sorry that we even had alcohol in the home. I wasn't an alcoholic, but I would have a wine cooler or something. I participate in that, how I feel, passively, but I knew her dad was drinking more, but I thought that was undercover.
Yeah.
You think you're hiding it. You think you're hiding it from the kids. And I think the final blow was one time he came home drunk and my daughters were still out. They were both driving. I thought, oh my gosh, he could have hit them and killed them on the way home. And it's something has to give here. Something has to change. So her marriage didn't last long. I encouraged her husband to get help because she was going from ER to ER to get opioids for her quote-unquote migraines. And he was trying to support them and work and go to school, and he was just at the end of his rope. So I said, let's go to a dual diagnosis program, or let's go to a program for us, and then I wanted her to go to a dual diagnosis group. And she did, and she met a man there and broke all the rules of, any 12-step programs, started dating him, got pregnant by him, and had a baby, and then her husband found out and divorced her. So she was with this guy for a while. He introduced her to heroin, and he went to prison he had quite a long record before she got involved, and he got her involved with crimes. She robbed us 3 times, and it was just a really a difficult period. Being a mandated reporter, I had called where we lived, it was DCFS for children multiple times, and tried to get him, and finally ended up in court. We got her son, and we were foster parents for him twice. The last time she had left, this guy the father was in jail, so she found somebody else. And she did everything that a young girl does to get money for drugs.
Right.
It's a very painful, dangerous lifestyle. But the man called us up and said, please come take her son. He was crying. He said, take him. He said, she's going to kill herself, and I'm worried about him. Please take him. And I said, I can't this time. If I take him, the authorities won't give me any power. I said, you have to call the police. And once they get involved, I will take him. But the previous time, once she got out of jail, I had to give him back. And I knew it wasn't okay. I had her sign this affidavit. She promised to do all, blah, blah, blah. and of course didn't. So we waited till the police came, and then I got my grandson again for the second time. And she went to jail again. She just stole from people, just did all sorts of things. I mean, she looked like a walking ghost. She was so thin. I think at that point she was also into cocaine, whatever she could get that she could afford where she was at. And she used to say, Mom, I still have all the letters from her that she wrote to me, and I think I'm pretty good, even though I know I'm blind. I think I'm pretty good at knowing when she really meant what she wrote, and when she was in jail, she was clean, and I could tell by the writing, the sentence structure, and everything that she really meant it. And she's like, she thanked me. She always said that I pressed charges against her, and all I did is call the police when I was robbed. I thought it was her, but I wasn't sure it was her. I was kind of scared. You go in your house and find out somebody's been going through all your stuff, and so I just called the police, and then I didn't go down and press charges against her. I just said I've been robbed, and then they found all my stuff at the pawn shop. She was charged with that, as well as a bunch of other burglaries and acts of crime that she'd been committing throughout the area. So she went to jail again for a while. This son that we had for 2 different periods of time, he ended up being adopted by an aunt, a wonderful woman who is taking care of him. And then she kind of turned things around. Well, I don't know. She got on methadone. So she was at least getting things more a legal way, I think. I'm not sure exactly what she was doing, but she met the next man that she married and had a baby, and it just spiraled out of control again with I don't know what. But I remember having all her writings to me and Facebook posts and emails, and I wrote to her psychiatrist. I said, I understand you've changed her medicine, but I don't know what's wrong. I understand you can't tell me anything. I said, but look at this. She is not okay, She's obviously not okay, and you're prescribing her stuff. So this went on for years and years, and she finally, that husband said, I can't take this anymore. He also was crying because she was a very sweet, beautiful girl, and just would torture people, wouldn't let them sleep, till they got to their breaking point, that these men were trying to work and support their families, and they, other than the one guy who got her pregnant the first time, her husbands were very nice, very responsible people. They weren't drug addicts, they weren't alcoholics, So she had a baby that died about 4 hours after he was born, then got pregnant again, had another one, and that's when the last husband said, I have to divorce her, I can't. So then she moved right in with another guy that she had met when they were living at a hotel for a period of time, and his previous wife died of a heroin overdose, and the wife before that one died of unknown but suspicious activity. So she was with him. I still got to see her second son that the father was raising, and thankful for that. But this other guy was he was abusive, physically, every which way, and she really, really spiraled out of control. She ended up with liver failure, kidney failure, and in spite of all that, was still, the doctors couldn't believe how she was still alive. And they said it's only because of her age that she seemed to be doing better. And she was at the hospital, at a local hospital, and the doctor said, she's probably only got 2 days left. So her sister flew in to be with us, and they sent her to the Walter Payton Liver Center at UIC in Chicago. And they were working her up for a procedure that would buy her time until she was cleared to get a liver transplant. And she said, no, I'm not worthy of it. There's other people who need a liver that, like children, innocent people who haven't done anything to destroy their liver. And she signed herself out of the hospital. And after that happened, things got really, really ugly. We found out that the cell phone I gave her for her birthday had been used for drug transactions, and we turned it over to the police. And of course, that didn't make her happy. And there were threats against us, and to the point where we were advised by everyone that we had to file an order of protection. So we did that until I could get some other stuff in place, and we went back to court. And I said, "Look, she needs me. You know, I'm the only quote unquote normal person in her life. I don't want to just throw her out, but she needs me, but I have to feel safe too. I can't have threats against my life."
Right.
So we worked that out, and a couple weeks later I called her. Actually, she called me at night, and I was supposed to pick her up, and we were going to go down to the beach because she loved going down to the beach. And she's like, "Mom, I'm going to jump in. I'm going all the way, and you better bring a blanket." And I said, "Okay." I'm going to pick her up at 1 o'clock. And I'll never forget, the next day I was shopping in Ace Hardware, and I get a call. And he called up. He says his name, and he says, "Sarah's dead." I'm like, "What?" It's like, "I'm supposed to pick her up. We're supposed to go. I'm picking her up in 2 hours." And he didn't know anything. I said, "Well, where is she?" He didn't know. He was high. But they had bought drugs. He bought drugs from someone who sold drugs to a girl who lived 2 doors down the street, or in the hotel, and had died 2 nights prior from a major drug overdose. And so the investigation is ongoing, but it was, what they had was just laced with all sorts of drugs, and he let her die out in the parking lot. We watched the videos. He left her there and went back inside to get high, and a passerby saw her and called 911 41 minutes after she collapsed. So nothing was done to help save her. And I don't know if it would have, but the incredible thing to me is, being a medical person, I wanted to know everything, and I wanted to know she was okay too. Even though I knew she was dead, I want to make sure she hadn't been beaten to death, because her husband is not a nice person. And I saw the autopsy result, and her body was getting better. She had been clean for a while, or maybe not clean, using less. I don't know, because she hid so much from me. I knew she wasn't okay. I had our pastor visiting her and meeting with her and just trying everything, but she just couldn't beat it, And she thanked me over and over again for never giving up on her. She knew I was always there. I learned a lot about enabling people. It's like I wasn't going to enable her. I would buy her food, that she could consume. If I bought her clothes, I made sure I had the tags ripped off so she couldn't return them and get money for it or something. I would make sure she had what she needed. I'd drive her to medical appointments, assist in any way I could, but this guy was just poison to her, and she finally switched and made him healthcare power of attorney instead of me. I thought, yeah, the guy who leaves you out in the parking lot dead, that's who you picked. So obviously it's been the most painful thing I've ever endured. I never understood truly what shock was until that day in the Ace Hardware. I went running out of this door screaming like some crazy person and called them back. It's like, "What? Tell me this again. This can't be true. I just made this up." And it was just awful. From the way the funeral was supposed to go. The last 4 months, all she ever wanted to talk about was her funeral. And after he called me back after she had died, he says, "I know that she wants you to plan everything, and how she wanted it and everything." And I said, "Okay." So we made all the arrangements, and then at the last minute, he changed it all. He said, "Nope, you're out. You can't even come to it. You can't come to the funeral." Taking her body, and as if things can get worse. I didn't think they could. And it's like, "What do you mean?" So I'm like, "Okay, fine. We don't need a body for a funeral. We're having a funeral anyways, because I'm not going to not have a funeral for my daughter." And he wrote an obituary. He didn't even know anything about her. The obituary is a joke. And that, to this day, it still bothers me that if somebody Googles her name, they see what he wrote. I wish I could have that stricken from the record and, say who she really was and what a kind person she was, but very ill. And addiction is just an awful illness. Why it can strike one person in a family and not someone else. Why someone can have a drink or a cigarette or some drug and not get addicted, and then someone else is one time and they're locked in, and why mental health can't be better, be more effective. These are questions I don't have the answers to, but parents, please open your eyes, look, I can't do anything to bring her back, but if by sharing my story I can help someone else, I want to. And it's only natural to say, what did I do wrong? What should I have done different? It's all my fault, or blame somebody else. And I can't do that, because I can say that Jesus died on the cross to forgive me for my sins, so I have to forgive myself. If I don't forgive myself, I'm saying that I'm better than he is, and that my sin is so bad his act didn't do anything for me, but it did. So, and it did for her. He came to save the lost and the found. My faith has gotten deeper through this. I know grief sometimes draws people away from their faith and other people's closer. I don't know how I would survive without my faith. I also was introduced to something called faithshare.org, which really helped me. You sign up and they send you a daily email. It is scripture-based, so it's a Christian organization. They also have meetings in the area. If you just go to their website and put in your zip code, it'll tell you where they have a group in your area. And I hooked up with a wonderful group. And I went through that program as well as the daily emails, and I've started going through the emails again. They also have a book, but for me, it was very helpful. I know there's all sorts of help things out there, but I highly recommend that, or at least someone should consider that when they're grieving. And I found out I was welcomed by so many friends of the new club you never want to be a club of, isn't that your child died? Because, like everybody says, parents shouldn't bury their children. And I grieve for my 2 grandsons that will never know their mother. I've got lots of pictures of her with them and letters about how much she loved them. I grieve that my other daughter doesn't have a sister. I don't know what it's like to lose a sister, because I have a sister and I know how precious she is. But that's my story, and thank you for letting me share it with you ladies.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. I have to say, Diane, I know that probably doesn't feel like it, but you are an extraordinary woman. I mean, everything you did for your child. What more could you ask for,
Okay, guys, we're all just going to cry a little bit. Okay, it's fine.
And I think the part that you have to hold on to is that, before the throes of addiction took hold, she had a servant's heart,
She did.
She was trying so hard, and I get, myself, my kids, a lot of people in my family have struggled with mental health, so we all get it. And thank goodness that, because of people like you sharing their story, and just how things have progressed, there are, new treatments and more awareness and stuff, but it's going to take, people like you continuing to share the story, be vocal about it for, things to change and open up and building that community and resiliency, that, it takes a village to take care of everyone, because mental health and addiction is such a hard disease. I mean, it will take the most, beautiful human being and turn them into, Dr. Hyde. And they will do stuff that you never in your wildest dreams thought that they were, capable of. And it is a family. I mean, the whole family suffers, the whole friends suffer. But it also takes the whole family then to get back into recovery. So, I think you're amazing. I think everything that you did for your daughter and your grandkids, I mean, is just so strong and so inspiring. And think you could have, I don't know if there was anything you could have done. I think you were so strong, and you probably kept her going in times where she really needed you. So, yeah. I don't know what else.
So I'm kind of thinking about, to the same sentiment. Recently, I trained a group of mental health first aiders, and you and your husband were there. And your reason, we talk about our reasons, right? Why are we here? And your reason was because you wanted to continue to help people. And I mean, I think that just shows your love for your daughter is continuing through that, right? Like, you're still working to help people that were in her situation, your family who might be susceptible to mental health conditions, especially your grandchildren, since they're biologically hers. And it's just amazing to see that you are willing and open to continuing to help, because what you've endured is enough to shut someone down, that's for sure. So thank you for being, not only having a daughter that had a servant's heart, but also having a servant's heart yourself, because obviously that's what we need in this community and in every community, to make change, to help people understand truly what addiction is. We do mental health first aid because we know as prevention people that addiction is a part of mental health, right? And your example with your daughter is what I really hope people understand and hear and take away, is that mental health is at the heart of this, right?
It is. It
And that
really
can happen
is.
to anybody.
Yeah. And you can only endure that pain so long. I saw her trying so hard to be happy,
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of shame with that, because they think, well, I don't really have anything to feel bad about. Why do I feel so bad? But
I have everything. Why should I be sad?
Yeah. But people don't understand that, sometimes it's a chemical imbalance. And that's where, the medical field has come a long way, because now they actually have genetic testing that can tell you that all these medications that someone would have had to try before they got to the right one, they can test now and say, this is the one that your body needs. And before they didn't have that. Wow. So now they have that. So rather than, because mental health too is a lot of trial and error, and it's a long road, and sometimes can be very painful. Some people are lucky and they get on meds right away, and it's great. Sometimes people have to try 15, 20 medications before they find the right one for them.
If I could add something, it's so important while they're doing that to communicate with their health care provider, the prescriber. Because as a school nurse, I saw so many times when a doctor would prescribe something and the parent would give 1 or 2 doses and say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I said, did you tell the doctor? That's fine that you don't want to, but tell the doctor, because how can they know? You can't just make up something. It's that communication between the doctor and the parent or the patient is just critical.
Yeah, and then the family history of addiction you throw in there. You're right. It does make you wonder sometimes about, why am I able to do this, but somebody else does it, and, it just triggers something in them. And that's where you do have that genetic, predisposition that you have to be aware of. I know I have a family history of addiction in my family, and so I've had very open communication with my children about, you have a genetic predisposition, so you have to be cautious. And, we've had those conversations, but I'm lucky that I have that knowledge. Not everyone does. So I think that's something that we need to, teach our community as parents, and in our schools have these prevention programs, so we're able to communicate with everybody so they are aware of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really tough sometimes, especially when we're in, we have people around us. Like, I'm thinking of your ex-husband, right? And he was obviously had dependence on alcohol. And so that can make for a very chaotic situation. And so sometimes it's hard to have the clarity of mind, right? To be like, okay, this can also trickle down. And so for people listening today, if you have a partner, or you have parents, or you have anybody in your circle, in your bloodline, or your children's bloodline, that have a dependency issue, you need to think about, educating yourself, not only yourself, but your children. How can this impact them. Because it is, we have examples. We do something called Overdose Lifeline, where we go and we teach kids about opioid dependence and things like that. And it's just like a flick of a button, for some people. It just, you take it and that's it. Your brain kicks in and it needs it, and you can't choose any longer. And so it's just so important for parents to educate their kiddos that, like, it's not a safe bet. You don't know what's going to happen. You might think, oh, one time's not going to hurt me, but it really can.
Yeah, and it's I don't think people realize it's such a hard feeling to overcome. I mean, if you are already struggling with a mental health issue and, you're low on dopamine, and then all of a sudden you finally get a key to a lock that clicks open and just floods of this thing that you've been longing for forever to make you better. That's a really hard thing to overcome and say that I don't want more of this. I mean, your body's telling you I need this, like I need air, like I need food. And I mean, that's a really, really hard thing that it's going to take a lot of treatment and counseling and stuff to overcome. It's not easy at all.
And it sounds like you connected with Sarah with a lot of resources, so.
Yeah, we had good medical insurance, we had good coverage, and I had, my nursing background, so I knew, better providers compared to some providers that you really won't even take your dog to.
Yep.
She had the best of the best, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah. I think the important too is, like you did, starting early, sometimes kids, when they show signs of mental health, they struggle in silence for a long time. You notice those things, but some kids, they say only 50% of kids actually get treated for their mental health illness, out of, however many that are then suffering in silence. So, and then after that, it takes a while. So we know that the earlier that they can get treatment and help, the sooner the better. And then, of course, we know that obviously there was some trauma there with your ex-husband. So, if there's any life changes, getting your child, therapy for that, having conversation to make sure that they're adjusting and being okay with what those changes are is always better, because I don't think we talk enough about adverse childhood experiences, too. Yeah,
that's a whole topic we could go into again. We've done it once or twice, but, it never hurts for a refresh on adverse childhood experiences. So I was wondering, if we have parents listening today, what's one thing you would say to them to kind of so maybe they can help identify if their child is struggling?
I'd say all the basics of what you read about, if you notice any change in hygiene, likes, what do they like to do? All of a sudden they don't want to. One thing I noticed with my daughter, and I haven't read about it, I don't know what it is, but lack of ability to feel in front of people. She had the little pet mouse that she just adored. And by accident, when she was cleaning its cage, she went to put the top on it and put the top over its neck, and it died. And she acted like it was okay, but she would go in her room and sob. And I would open the door. I'm like, "Are you okay?" And then you could tell she's like, "Oh, no, I'm fine." Acting stoic, like everything's fine. And I always wonder if that had something, if that was a first sign of something mental health wise, why she felt she couldn't show her emotions in front of me, or I don't know, because I told her, I said, I know you love that little mouse. You didn't do this on purpose. Accidents happen. But I always remember that. I don't know. That just came back. But
honestly, I think I'm the same way. I try to hold my emotions in, but and then
when she was little and with her mom. She knew I cried. I would not hide my emotions if something was going wrong. But I think, what I really wish, if I could change one thing over all that, is to have an alcohol-free home. When you know that there's alcohol, but of course when you're living with an alcoholic, they're not going to let that happen. So I guess I couldn't change that, but just been more alert and wanting to believe that a lot of her problems were the migraines, even though I knew it's like, this doesn't make sense. You have a migraine now, but then you can go out, or you can, like, the bright light doesn't bother you, or, I mean, just things that didn't measure up. So when you start to doubt yourself, don't doubt yourself. Listen to your intuition. Listen to that sixth sense that you have, and just dig till you get to the bottom of it, and know that your sixth sense isn't there for a reason, to protect your child. They didn't have, to my knowledge, drug tests and all that kind of stuff back then that you could do at home. If you have access to that, use that. But I think, if their bedroom is in your home, you have the right to inspect and make sure that they're safe, because their life depends on it. And yeah, you're going to violate some trust, but they've obviously already done something to violate your trust, and trust is a two-way street.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
And she just, I remember I was reading, when I'm coming up on her 2-year anniversary, and it's always a rough time for me, or always, but this is only the second time, but I was reading some of her letters that she wrote to me, and she just thanked me for like I say, always being there, but trying everything, trying to help her. And she was just sorry that for all the things she'd done to me. She said, I've done things I never would have believed I would have done. But she said, I wished I would have listened to you. She said, when I was a kid, I thought, oh, you're just my mom, what do you know? And she said, I wished I had listened to you. It would have saved myself a lot of pain in my life. And I just saw that a couple weeks ago, and it's like, she would have too.
Yeah.
But that is just natural teenage behavior, you know? I mean, that is nothing straight from normal. Kids don't think parents know anything, and looking back, too, sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, I really acted like I had the world figured out at 17 and mom knew nothing, So that's really just kind of normal behavior, but
I think, too, like what I did several times, and it unfortunately didn't work out for me, but I'm very aware of HIPAA laws and all that stuff, and it's like, yeah, you can't tell me anything, but I can tell you. I can give you pictures, I can give you quotes, I can give you audio recordings. This is not normal. This is your patient. Look into it,
That's a good point, because you're right. Like, people, I think we feel like there's a barrier.
Yeah. You can't talk to the doctor. Like, no.
Yeah, I can tell you stuff.
I can tell you,
That's awesome.
And even after she died, I contacted the psychiatrist, who wasn't even there anymore, and he kept prescribing stuff for her. And I said, look, she's dead. I said, if you get a request for another refill, it's from her husband. I said, I hope you'll call the police, because, this has got to stop.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was getting drugs from the VA, too, and selling the VA's drugs. And it's like, this is for our veterans, not for scammers and drug addicts. And
the great thing about Indiana is we have, and I don't know, well, I suppose this was probably going on, but I know that you relocated, so I don't know what was out where you were. But here in Indiana, they've really pushed for people to, prescribers, doctors, law enforcement, everybody have access to something called Inspect, which basically, if you have like a opioid or an abusable substance, I think is kind of like the method they use. If you have a prescription for that, it dings you. So like if I go to Dr. A, I can't turn around and go to Dr. B and get a prescription because they'll see it in Inspect and they have to check it. It's a state law. So that's one of the ways that Indiana is combating the opioid overdose. I mean, I know it is good. It's caused some uproar amongst, because, of course, it's made it harder for people who have, pain and they need to
have a need.
Right, who have the need, and it's made it a little bit more challenging. And I think that there's still kinks to work out, of course, but I think to save lives, it's doing a pretty darn good job.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure. You had mentioned previously that was it your daughter that had told you that she had been searching, or that you saw that she had been searching for how to make herself happy?
She told me.
Okay.
Because I asked her, I got up, and I would always get up early, and she was an early riser too. We used to run together and stuff. And I said, what are you looking at? She says, I'm just trying to find out ways to be happy.
So I think that's something to bring up to parents now too. Fortunate enough she told you, but sometimes that's not always the case. So for parents to be able to search their children's search history and that kind of stuff to see if that is popping up, or there's lots of mental health stuff coming up, or maybe they're searching how to harm themselves or whatever the case may be, to have that open dialogue about what they're seeing on the internet and stuff to see, because that obviously is a big red flag.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer, and this may be, a little bit not comfortable for a lot of parents, but I'm a firm believer that if I own it and I have provided it to you, it is mine to do as I please with. I have a 2-year-old, so I don't really have much to worry about right now. However,
I have teenagers.
When when we get to that point when a phone is on the table for her, you bet your bottom dollar I'm gonna be putting something on there that will tell me exactly what you're looking up. So, and I'll be honest about that. Maybe I'm questioning on the honesty on that one. Yeah. Not that I would want to break trust, but of course, like if you tell somebody, "Hey, I'm going to know your search engine history," they're going to be like, "Okay, well, I'll just go use someone else's phone."
Right. Go to the library.
Yeah. So we'll see how that all plays out. I obviously don't want to break trust, but I just really believe, like, for parents, in a more mild way, like, it's important that you are aware. Use tools that are out there. I know Betsy has something called Life 360. I've heard of other people using it where it tracks where your kids are going on their phone. Usually they're aware, they know, but it's a great tool, right? I mean, even if they get into any kind of emergency, it's good to know where they're at, Yeah,
and I honestly think I'm just lucky and my kids just came out awesome, but my kids and I have always had a very open dialogue. They've been very communicative with me. We've talked lots about, if you get yourself into a situation where maybe there's stuff going on at a place that you're at, send me this emoji and I will come get you. I don't care if you're in a field and you don't know where you are. I will find you. But then also the fact that they can talk to me about anything, even if seems really weird or embarrassing or whatever. It's always been a very open door policy, and so far that's worked for us, but I think that's just a big thing is having those conversations over and over and over and over again, not just having this one talk about something and then never repeating it again. I think it's consistent and making sure that you're just constantly, because also too, sometimes things go in one ear and out the other with teenagers. So repeating it and making it a foundation, because a lot of times too, I've been in situations where I'm so proud of my kids because they'll tell me like, hey, remember you told me this? Well, I told this to another person and now they're gonna call this person to get help or whatever, and I'm like, that's awesome, and I love that so much. And so I think just talk to your kids as much as possible about their mental health, about what's going on at school. Is there any crazy things happening? I mean, you never know what mundane conversation can turn into a very meaningful conversation.
So you kind of made me think about when you were saying mundane conversation, you don't know what, I don't know why this came to my mind, but I thought about phones, and like we miss a lot sometimes because we have our phones in our hands, right? And we give ourselves like a distraction. And my aunt said something to me the other day, and she said, you never know when magical moments are going to happen. And I thought, oh, that's so, with the toddler, feels like there's just always something new every day, and she was so right when she said that, and that like kind of hit me in a way like, okay, yeah. So we have to pay attention, right? And it kind of goes back to like this, you've got to pay enough attention to know what's going to, what's going on. How do you know if your kid's having a tough day if you're not even keeping your eyes on them? You know what I mean?
I used to drive them to school, and I would have a carpool. I would be in the front seat driving, and they'd be in the back. So I would turn the radio speakers up loud in the back so they had to talk louder so I could hear what they were saying.
Parenting hack. I love it.
And it worked out, They'd be be talking real loud, not realizing that all the sound from the radio was backed by them. I had no sound other than what they were saying.
That's some like spy level stuff. Yeah.
I was thinking spy level, Betsy. Reading my mind over here.
It was good, yeah.
Very good. I'm using that. Okay.
Write that down.
Don't you ever listen to this podcast medium. Just going to learn all my tips.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's hard, and I don't shame any parent. I mean, we get busy and life happens, and and you think you're doing everything you can to be involved in your kid's life, but it runs you ragged too. But just saying like, yes, I need to carve out some time to check in with my kid consistently to see how they're doing and stuff. I think just that reminder that just needs to happen every day.
Yeah. And there's a thing that one of our coalition members says, and it's always kind of stuck with me, and it's kind of relevant to the car. I don't know why. But she says, like, when she had her child, like when he was a teen, if she got him in the car, he would talk and talk and talk and talk until that car stopped. So that would be her moment, right? When she got him kind of in the car and he'd be after his day and he'd just be going and going and going. That's when she learned the most and heard the most. Mm-hmm. And she also said, here's another tip for you all. She'd take the long way around sometimes. There you go. I'm just like, that's so funny. I mean, I feel like if you let them be in a space where maybe they let their defenses down a little bit, it helps.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna tell you too. I know that there are some websites free of charge that you can post your own, basically obituary, which I can send you. And if any other out there, you probably just Google search it. I was looking at it, just curiosity. Recently, my mother passed away, so I was looking at that kind of stuff, just out of curiosity. But yeah, you can make your own obituary and post it, and it might replace the other one,
or at least they'll find that one in addition.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Yes,
I like that.
So yeah, I guess I went the route. I wanted to do something a little bit more bigger and grander and more sentimental than you would put in a newspaper. So I wrote my own version of an obituary, and I posted on Facebook for all of her friends and family and stuff. But yeah, I think I think it's really important, and I think it would be, I don't know, another part of your healing journey to be able to do that. So yeah, I will get that sent to you.
And the people who know her though, the people who knew her, they know who she was.
Yeah.
And so, whatever he put out there, the people who knew her know who she was in her heart. Even if in her final time, she wasn't the best representation of herself. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's got to be tough.
Mm-hmm. And then if for some reason I think anyone out there that's listening finds himself in a situation, I'll have Carley go because I think she knows a little bit more about it, but the law about reporting if somebody has an overdose. But
yes,
I know that sometimes is a fear if you are put in that situation where you're worried about that you have maybe done some illegal drug activity and somebody's had a medical emergency, that it's important to call.
Yes. So that's called Aaron's Law. I am not the expert on Aaron's Law, but I can give you some pretty general details, and please fact check me because I might have some of it a little off. But that's called Aaron's Law. I don't know if it's national, but I know that it's at least here in Indiana where we're at. And it basically provides protection to people who maybe both people have been using a substance and a person experiences an overdose. The other person that's been using the substance can call for emergency responders, and they have to stay on the scene, but then they are protected from legal, from getting like arrested, unless of course there's like a warrant or something else other than that overdose situation. So that's a really great thing that protects people, because we know like somebody who overdoses is likely around somebody else who may or may not be using a substance, right? And so for them to just leave a person, and I was younger, I had my very close friend, one of my very best friends, her cousin was left by 3 or 4 friends when she was overdosing and she passed away. And she was like, I don't know, her early 20s. She had 2 kids. I mean, because people were scared, they made the wrong decision. They were under the influence and they left her and she died. And that was horrible for the family to go through. And so I'm just really glad that we have something like Aaron's Law that is out there to protect those people who are struggling.
I think it's unique because I never heard of that until I moved to Indiana. So that's why I was wanting you, because I had never, back in South Dakota, had never heard of that before. So I think it's unique to hear. Maybe it's spread since then. I don't know. But that's why I was really excited, because I have heard of a lot of situations where EMS services were not called because that person was afraid of getting in trouble, which should never happen. So I was glad to hear that was here in Indiana for sure.
And also we have a ton of nalox boxes out in the community. Another really great thing about Indiana, I guess, yay Indiana. There is something called Overdose Lifeline. It was an agency started by a woman who lost her child to a opioid overdose. And they've done a lot of different things, like started programs and done lots and lots of things. But one thing that they're currently really, I guess pushing might be the right word, I'm not sure. But one of their main objectives right now is to get Narcan out there into the community. And Narcan is a nasal spray, typically is the most common way you see it, but you can also get one that is an injectable one. But most commonly what's accessible to the community is the nasal spray. So it will reduce an opioid overdose. Now, sometimes we have people who are taking things like fentanyl, and so you might need more than one Narcan. It's very possible that would happen, but it's free to the community. There's these really cool things called nalox boxes where they're just out there, available 24/7, posted outside of a building so people have access at all times of the days, unmonitored. And you could just go up and take however much you want. If you're somebody who either has a person that's struggling with substance use, specifically opioids, or if you are a person who has a family member that's prescribed opioids in your home, it's a good thing to have. You never know when somebody's going to accidentally overtake a medication or overdose from, a dependency kind of related issue. So it's just good to have on hand. We promote them. We have them. We have a really cool committee called the Root Committee, Reducing Opioid Overdoses Together, that does a lot of work to get those out there. So if you are listening and you're interested in learning more about where you can find those, you can go to Overdose Lifeline, or you can always give us a call or email us or reach out to us on Facebook.
Yeah. I have a couple doses in my purse. I carry some in my car. I carry some in my backpack. So I always try to have some on me just in case.
Even for households with young children where someone's prescribed an opioid for, cancer or some reason, and the little kids get into it by mistake.
Yeah, you never know, what might happen. I think it should be a staple, just like you would have a first aid kit. It's something that can, really make a big difference if you run into that issue.
Absolutely. So let us know if you need some.
Yes.
We have plenty. And then, if you're interested in doing any work around here, working with us, you can always reach out and we can get you connected with like the Root Committee, because they're doing a lot of really good things. So, and Betsy, where's the place you can go where you can do like it's like a video training or a training thing? I think it's Overdose Lifeline too, where like if you aren't familiar with how to use Narcan and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds great, but I'm not comfortable with having something I don't know how to use, I know there's a spot for that.
Yep. So if you go to Overdose Lifeline, they have training videos on exactly what to do. For example, they recommend putting someone in the recovery position, which is really hard to describe verbally right now. But you can watch that video, and it will give you step-by-step directions. Usually in nalox boxes, in the little pouch that the Narcan is in, there's also a little handout that will show you exactly what to do and give you instructions there. And I'm sure, if you just Googled it on YouTube, you probably find several really good ones. But I usually like to stick with Overdose Lifeline or National Institute of Health or SAMHSA, SAMHSA.org. A lot of those places, they have really good videos. And I was also going to mention too, If you are obviously someone who's struggling, there are lots and lots of resources out there. Porter County has a website called findhelp.org. That's really great. If you are have a family member that's struggling, they have several support groups for you as well that you can find on there. Specifically mental health groups. There's groups like NAMI that is out there for mental health support. So you can go to any of those, even today if you're interested, and find some of those resources to kind of get things started. And then during a crisis situation, here specifically in Porter County, I know that Porter Stark right now has a 24/7 crisis center. So if you're having any kind of mental health acute issues or ideas of suicide, you can go to them. You can just go up just like an emergency room and get help right away.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Betsy. Diane, we only have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to, first of all, thank you so much for joining us, because I know that this must have been a very tough thing to share. I know we talked previously to today, and you talked about how important it is for you to do things, like especially around the time when it's going to be like an anniversary time. And so I appreciate that you chose us to be one of the things that you did, and just to be out here sharing it. We definitely had some tears today, but I think that just shows how impactful Sarah's story is. Is there anything else before we sign off and say goodbye that you'd like to share with any listeners?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and if anybody ever wanted to reach out to me, you could let me know, and I'd be happy to help them.
Yeah. If you want, you can just send us a message on our Facebook or Instagram or our website, and we can get you in contact with Diane.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening today to Matters of Substance. We hope that today's message sits with you somehow, and that you can take the information that we discussed and apply it to help anybody around you, family, friends, or just people you get to know. So thanks for listening.